Hello and welcome to another video from the Fan Pub. It's Al here. How are you all doing? Week 2 is in the books. Hope you're doing alright in your fantasy leagues. And a few of you have been asking Al, who should I be targeting on the waiver wire in this week? So without further ado, let's find out. Right, first of all, there's been a lot of quarterback injuries. Big Ben's done for the season. Eli Manning's just been replaced by Daniel Jones as a starter in New York. Drew Brees is out for 6 weeks, and he's also got a bye week in week 9, so it could be week 10 before we see him. So obviously we already lost Nick Foles, so it's been a bit of a... I mean, there's probably a lot of you, especially in 2 QB leagues, looking for these sort of quarterbacks. So let's go through them. I mean, Josh Allen's only owned in 27% of the leagues. I'm presuming. I mean, he's put up 2 good weeks. He's averaged over 20 points a week. He's 12th QB overall, so that makes him a QB1. Got Cincinnati this week, which is it's not the best defense in the league. So, he'd probably be my top target if he's available. Jimmy G's had a mixed sort of couple of weeks. He had a great week 2, but a pretty poor week 1. But you can forgive him that after a long injury layoff. He's 16th ranked QB overall. And San Francisco are 2-0, and they're playing Pittsburgh, who are 0-2. So, and obviously they have quarterback problems of their own. Minshew, actually, the rookie out of Jacksonville that replaced Nick Foles, he's only obviously owned in probably bigger leagues, I would think, or people that are looking for a second quarterback just to cover their main quarterback's bye week. But he's actually done all right. 18 points and 16 points, 34 overall, and 7. I remember he didn't start week 1, so you could give him a bit of a tick up on that as well. So. He's definitely... They got Tennessee next week. Tennessee have started fairly strong as a defense, but they're going to have to throw, aren't they? So, DJ Chark, he sort of he's had a good start to the season, hasn't he? So we'll see if that sort of chemistry continues. Really. Number 4, Jacoby Brissett. He's still only owned in a small amount of leagues. Obviously, most bigger leagues he'll be owned, but if he's still there and you're a QB needy team, then he's a good option. Mason Rudolph actually did all right when he came in for Big Ben. We know Big Ben's lost to the season. He's got Juju Smith-Schuster and already linked up for 2 touchdowns when he came up in his... he got 12 points, in that small sample size of when Ben went down. Big Vance was the main beneficiary. He's a good big target, so maybe them 2 could be both worth looking at if they're available, but only if you're sort of desperation. And as we said earlier, Daniel Jones makes the list on number 6 for waiver wires to target. He's going to be the starter. Maybe all of your league haven't picked up on that if they're not checking it. And you're desperate for a QB. He's one you could put in for probably a cheapish bid in to try and see if you got it. And they got Tampa this week, so we know they're not the best defense on the planet. So it'll be interesting to see how he starts. So okay, on to the running backs. Mostert. We talked about him last week that he was going to share the load with Breeder due to Tevin Coleman's injury. Jeffrey Wilson, who's there at the bottom. I'll actually group these 2 together. These are sort of in the order we target them. But he's actually a good player, and he did well when he came in last year as well. So I think because he was buried on the depth chart, I think a lot of people didn't really pay any interest to him, or he's not one of the most fashionable players or one of the most heard of players, but. The actual performances don't lie. He put up 21 points last week, and that's in standard, so it'd been a lot more in PPR, and he's 12th ranked running back overall, so very interesting. Carlos Hyde's actually on limited work actually put up, I think he's like 190 yards and 80 yards or something like that, so pretty good numbers. He's 23 overall. He's still available in 60% of your leagues out there, so he's definitely one if you've lost a running back, or you're worried about someone with like Mixon until their ankles healed, then he's someone to target on the waiver wire. Number 3 Hurts. He's Frank Gore. He's pedestrian, but he put up 14 points. Singletary got injured. He got a hamstring injury. We don't quite know the severity of it, but it's probably going to at least limit him for a couple of weeks, best case scenario. So Yeldon is somebody else that you might target in deeper leagues as well, because if Singletary's out, then it's probably going to be Gore and Yeldon. Gore always seems to get a role in these offences, and that's just the way it is, and we have to live with it, unfortunately. I mean, he's sort of the grandfather of running backs now, isn't he? He's been doing it for years. And, fair play to him, because he's still getting jobs, and there's plenty of younger players that aren't. And he's available in over 90% of leagues, so go out and get him. Rex Burkhead. He's probably got more work than we sort of surmised at the start of the year. You never can tell with New England. We always said this throughout the thing. One of the reasons we didn't like Michelle, not because he isn't a good player, but because of the knee injuries, because you can't trust Bill Belichick. And Rex Burkhead's actually, he's done okay. If you're really desperate in bigger leagues, that is. I wouldn't pick him up in smaller leagues, but in bigger leagues, if you're in need of running back depth, if you're in a 14 or 16 man, it's really hard to find running backs sometimes. And these are the sort of guys that might sort of pay dividends if they're available, just to fill in the flex and see if they can pick up 8-10 points a week. So these points are all standard, by the way. So like I say, in PPR they'll be bigger. Chris Thompson, another person who'll do better in PPR. AP is going to run between the tackles, and if he's available and it's more standard or half point, I'd probably favour him. In full point PPR, Chris Thompson always be a decent option for at least depth there if you need to throw him in the flex. The next one, Darwin Thompson. Now, in Kansas City, obviously we talked to Darwin Thompson before the start of the season, but McCoy's had an MRI today, and it's fairly good news for McCoy. There's no significant damage to his ankle. He's expected to be at least in the running to be fit. I guess he'll be questionable for Sunday. So, KC at Baltimore. This sort of, and actually Damian Thompson got injured as well. So, if they're both sort of struggling, I don't know how. I haven't heard the Damian Williams news yet. How bad it is, how severe it is. I don't think either of them are particularly serious, but we're not sure about that yet. But Darwin Thompson, just because he's a healthy guy, he's a young guy, he's especially in PPR. He hasn't done a lot yet, but might be worth just snagging if you got somebody that you're happy to drop, and especially in bigger leagues, then he could be a good option. Justin Jackson's been putting up steady numbers for the Chargers. It's been the Eckler show so far, and while he's still a hot hand, you expect Eckler to be used the majority of the time. But again, if you're in those deeper leagues and you need a player to fill in just in your flex or just to cover a bye week later in the season before Gordon's back, then he could be your man. We talked about Jeffrey Wilson. He came in and he put 15 points up. He basically got the two touchdowns from goal line carries. So if you take them away, I don't know how sustainable that is. He's scoring 2 rushing touchdowns, but Breeder and Mostert and Wilson all put up decent numbers. I think Breeder ran for over 120 yards or something like that. So, like we say, we like Breeder a lot, but the three of them are probably going to be mixed in because that's just the way Shanahan is with his running backs. So, again, in deeper leagues, maybe Wilson's one good one to target. Right, wide receivers. Like we talked about DJ Chark. He started well with Minshew. They've got a chemistry. He's only owned in less than 5% of leagues. A brilliant week 1 and a steady week 2. And he's the 5th wide receiver overall. I mean, I don't think anyone would have actually predicted that at the start. I mean, it's almost impossible. I mean, all the things that happened, like Minshew coming in. Obviously, Marquise Lee isn't fit yet. Westbrook's been a sort of played second fiddle to Chark really at the moment. So I don't know. Definitely an interesting option if he's still there. He's someone worth looking at. Same with Terry McLaurin. Very, very surprising. Case Keenum's actually put up big numbers as well. So he's somebody, if he's there in the QB thing and you're a QB needy team, Keenum's done pretty well. And it's mainly fact to the relationship with McLaurin. He's 8th wide receiver overall. He's put up 30 points in standard, so over 2 weeks. So, you take that any day of the week. So definitely one to look at. John Brown, we've been telling you about. He's been a sort of very good value all the way through, really, and he hasn't disappointed really. 25 points in 2 weeks. Puts him in the top 20 of wide receivers, so where you were drafting him is pretty good. Got Cincinnati this week. He's available in 69% of leagues, so you can't sniff at that, can you? So DK Metcalf, only owned in less than 50% of leagues. Put up steady numbers both weeks. Like I say again, this is standard scoring, so averaging over 10 a week. You'll take it every day of the week, especially for somebody you wouldn't expect to be producing that sort of those sort of numbers this early. So very promising for him. Devin Smith, if you haven't heard of him, he's the Dallas wide receiver. He came in when Gallup got injured. He's going to be out 4 weeks, probably 3 or 4 weeks with a knee injury. That opens the door for more sort of Randall Cobb, Devin Smith. Randall Cobb also on the list. I mean, we know what we're going to get from Randall Cobb. Devin Smith came on and actually scored a big touchdown. So, if you want that boom or bust play, I'd say Devin Smith's your man. If not, you could probably look at Randall Cobb for really steady numbers. He put up a pretty dismal second week, but a pretty good first week where he showed some metal. Now, Demarcus Robinson, I mean, you could have him higher than this. He certainly, while Tyreek's going to out, I mean, we give him a big shout on the live fantasy show that Sean was doing. I gave him a shout out in the chat, and I think he's woefully underrated player. Just because any part of that offense, they can just throw a touchdown. I mean, Mahomes can show a touchdown to anybody, anytime, and he seems to do it with ease. So, and he seemed to be the deep target. I know Mecole Hardman is also on the list for the same reason. Caught a big touchdown, but he had less snaps. And look at Demarcus Robinson, 29 points. That's Tyreek Hill numbers. So I think it was his first 100-yard career game. That John pointed out, he's one of the Arrowheads abroad. He's one of our community. He runs one of our live leagues. He was talking about it. And we were talking about how good he was going to be before the game. And we thought he was underrated. And he's now going to be a hot commodity on the market. And I would say if you've got the room and someone needs to drop, he's definitely a good boom or bust guy that could really pay dividends for you. Same with Mecole Hardman. I think Robinson's ahead of him on the depth chart right now. So although you might be tempted to go with a flashy rookie, trust your numbers, trust the steadiness, trust the depth chart. So number 10, we've talked about Randall Cobb. So number 10, Nelson Aguilar. And this is just pure opportunity because Alshon Jeffrey got injured, Dallas Goedert got injured, Deshaun Jackson got injured. So Nelson Aguilar, a very good game, and he was a guy that Wentz was targeted more than anyone. In the absence of those players, seemed to be the main beneficiary. Him and Ertz were just catching lots of passes. 16 points is standard. If both Jeffrey and Jackson sit, then Aguilar's a great fill-in for this week in your flex, definitely. And this is just a reminder because a lot of people have forgotten about Golden Tate, and the people will be telling you next week to pick him up. Now, next week you'll have a lot more competition because all the other waiver wire people, they'll be telling you get Golden Tate, he's back in week 4. If you get him week 2, if you got room it's for week 3. If you get him for this sort of week 3 thing, you're ahead of the game. He's available in 79% of leagues, so he's I know it's the Giants and it's Jones, but he's a guy that sort of played in the slot, had lots of catches, and it's worth taking a chance on him, I think. It certainly will be a lot easier to get him this week cheaply than it will be next week, so it's always better to have him if you've got that room on your bench, not in sort of 10-team leagues and stuff like that, but in the bigger leagues, if he's still there, you've got a bench that's looking a bit murky or not too hot, then Golden Tate is definitely a good option. Greg Olsen, we had him on our tight ends to target late in drafts. He's owned in less than 0.5% of leagues, but him and Cam showed they had that great chemistry again. He had over 100 yards receiving, lots of catches, and he's a top 10 tight end. Same with Jason Witten, that was available in 80% of leagues. His age and his legs might have got his age and his legs are sort of going, but he's top 8. He's got touchdown both weeks, and that in your tight ends lot isn't bad. Moving on to Will Disley, 2 touchdown game for Seattle at New Orleans, and he's number 7 overall. So, and he's available in nearly 100% of leagues. So, if you need a tight end, then you could do a lot worse than him. Hayden Hurst. This is real sort of desperation for Hayden Hurst, but he had 1 catch, but it was a touchdown, so you're just hoping you've got that red zone upside, and if you're really, really desperate, then you could go for him. And number 5, as in with Golden Tate, next week everybody will be telling you to get Chris Herndon, and the secret will be out. It's about getting him now. 96% of leagues. Okay, the QB situation isn't that great, but that's why you need that safety net tight end, perhaps. So, in the same way that Mason Rudolph used that big Vance McDonald, then, maybe that Chris Herndon's a good player, and he could be the one to benefit in the absence of Darnold. So, again, like I say, there'll be a lot less competition for him now. If you've got that room to stash him, maybe you've got a big bench, or you're in a big league and there's just some players you don't like, or they're injured, then he's a good option. Or there's a lot of tight ends not performing, like Carl Rudolph. Maybe you look at Chris Herndon. The other one is Ben Watson as well. I think he's coming back after week 4 or something, and he's New England, but there's a lot of targets there. But just in case you're really, really desperate. Okay, now defenses. Now Dallas haven't set the world alight. They're 24th ranked overall, but they have Miami this week, and we all know how bad Miami have been so far, and they've just traded Minka Fitzpatrick as well. It just seems like everybody wants out. Nobody's really performing there. It's almost like they've given up and they just want the picks now. I mean, and that's what they're doing, building for the picks, and that's what you got to accept that as a Miami fan. I think I'm sure there'll be the odd game when you have a go at people, especially at home. But Dallas should be too good, surely. With Fitzmagic at QB, you've always got a chance of a few turnovers if you're playing the Dallas defense. San Francisco 49ers, again, they've got the Pittsburgh. It's not a rookie QB, but a new QB. We don't know quite what we're going to get from Rudolph. Maybe he can revitalise the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's always nice of a matchup to play somebody that they've been struggling even with Big Ben. So with a younger, more inexperienced QB, it could be a good play against Pittsburgh next week, the 49ers. Green Bay got Denver. They started really hot. Ranked 4 overall. 2 double-digit weeks. You'll take that every day of the week from your defense. And they got Denver, who are hardly a... Well, they're not... They're an all-right team, but they're not an amazing offense, are they? Although... We did tell you, Emmanuel Sanders, it was crazy value, and he's proven it already. I hope a few of you followed us in with that advice, because it looks pretty good right now. Number 4, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got the Giants. Again, as we talked about, Daniel Jones' first game, we don't know what we're going to get. Seems a chance to create some turnovers for me. If they're there on the waiver wire and you're streaming defences, then they could be your guy. Same with this one. Kirk Cousins has looked pretty awful at quarterback so far. Dalvin Cooks look spectacular. They're running the ball more. They're not throwing very much. And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if you're really, really desperate, then Oakland might be the pick. Just because Minnesota offense has been, Kirk Cousins pretty much has been pretty awful. Right. So we say top 10 overall. I mean, it probably depending on what you need for your team. But Raheem Mostert's top. If you need a running back, they're always quite hard to get, and he looked pretty good. So again, Carlos Hyde put in steady numbers. DJ Chark's knocked it out of the park. Terry McLaurin, we've talked about these players, but again, 30 points in 2 weeks of standard is amazing. John Brown, he's always that deep threat. He's still available in lots of leagues, and you get that boom or bust with him. He's that sort of guy that can take a big catch to the house. Greg Olsen, look back to him and Cam look back to their best. Well, Cam didn't, but those two in general linking up for over 100 yards was pretty good. And I was talking to Sean, and he was saying about what he spoke about in the fantasy football live show that he did on Sunday. I was listening in, obviously, I was there in the chat. A great show, actually. If you should check it out, he'll be there every Sunday. But he was saying that basically what the Bucks did to the Panthers, which is basically rush 7 every time, and they just nullified Christian McCaffrey and Cam. They were constantly under pressure, and they were saying, look, if you're going to beat us, Cam, you're going to have to throw long. He's had 2 shoulder injuries in 3 years. And it just showed. He was on the times that that Samuel and that Samuel beat his man, and he couldn't throw it far enough for him to sort of. He would have taken it to the house if he had the proper arm strength he's got, and it showed he didn't. He was having to come back to the ball. So although there might be, weirdly, if teams copy that rush 7 and nullify McCaffrey and Cam out of the game, because Cam's not running at the moment, probably due to his sprained foot, then those wide receivers have definitely got a boom or bust chance of, DJ Moore, Greg Olsen and Samuel. Definitely got sort of boom or bust to be able to take it, because they were doing man-to-man coverage, because if you rush 7, obviously you can't double cover anyone, and they were just saying, look, Cam, we don't think you can do it, and he couldn't. And but you've still got that opportunity that they might. Frank Gore, as we said, he's pretty much a starter with Singletary down. It's really sad for us. We like Singletary. He's been a big pick of ours for a long time on this sort of on this channel. So hopefully it's not too bad. But Gore for the next few weeks at least be steady numbers if you're desperate. DK Metcalf. We gave him a lot of love in our sort of rookie previews when we previewed all the rookies sort of in around the draft time, just after the draft time, and he's not let anyone else down. He's already performing. So like a few of them are, like McLaurin and a few others. The Browns, Marquise Brown. I mean, if he's still available, I doubt he is, but these rookies are really performing hot early on, and whether they can sustain it, I mean, that'll be interesting to see. Top streaming defense of the week, obviously Dallas. They're playing Miami. We did sort of put them up as a sneaky defense, and they haven't really done it yet, but maybe this is a week with Miami, because everyone seems to do it in Miami. I think Patriots, obviously, their defense put up a big score last week. All the big DraftKings teams had Patriots in it. A lot of sort of fantasy teams, obviously 30-odd points from the defence. You're laughing, aren't you? And Josh Allen, who at QB, he looks a good. I mean, there's going to be QB needy teams, and Josh Allen looks a good pick. He certainly not let anyone down, and he's dual threat, big arm, runs for yards as well, and chance of a rushing touchdown, a bit like you get with Deshaun Watson and the Dak Prescotts and Lamar Jacksons of this world. So it's good. Just some details there. There's our Patreon site if you're interested in joining that. We've got big ideas for next year. We'll have a lot more things included in it that you'll have access to. Like DK, we've been doing DraftKings rankings and point value per dollar basically for that. We'll have a draft guide out next year. Lots of other big things coming. Also, we said, we've been hinting at big changes. So keep it here. If you love chatting about American football all year long, then our Discord site, that is pretty much 100% NFL. There are other bits in there, but it's mainly NFL leagues, all the NFL news, chatting about it during games. Really good community, and it's really active. Discord's an app. It's a free app, so it doesn't cost you anything. None of these things cost you anything, apart from Patreon, but that's purely optional. There's a website for the fan pub, our Facebook for the fan pub, and my Twitter handle if you want to send me questions or abuse or anything really, at the fan pub Al. Again, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.